Okay, looks like we're good to go here. So welcome everybody to the first Kin Community Question Period. Question Period is something we've been doing at Kick for quite a while now. And basically what we do is every 2 weeks we get together and it's a chance for the company to ask me questions about where we're going, what we're working on, etc. And how it works is, first we send out a message and anybody can ask a question anonymously. So we really want to get those hard-hitting, good questions, what people want to know. So we let everybody ask those anonymously. But when we do that, we then filter them for 3 rules. First of all, we want to make sure the questions are on topic. They're talking about the company or the projects or the things we're working on. And they're not repeated questions. These aren't questions that we've already answered before. Second, we want to make sure they're constructive. So we're all trying to figure this out together, build this together. So have constructively worded questions. And then finally, third, we don't allow questions that are about an individual. This is not a place to call it this individual, what the heck was that person doing, or what the heck was this person doing. But beyond that, pretty much anything goes. So you can ask anonymously, we filter for those 3 rules, and then I answer live in front of the company on the spot. So I don't actually see the questions ahead of time. And the reason for that is if I do, I worry that I'm going to be sort of sitting there and trying to position it and figure out how to say it to get this sort of message across. And that just feels inauthentic to me. I almost want to be caught a little bit by surprise because I think it forces me to be more authentic, more open, more honest. So what we thought we'd do today is to try doing question period with the Kin community. We're sort of mid-transition here from a private company that's trying to build a single app, scale it, and turn it into a business. And we're now transitioning into a crypto organization. We're trying to spark a movement that is going to have people from all around the world contributing and working together. So how this is going to work is we set up a page on Reddit. In the comments, anybody can ask any question. The moderators are going to go through and look at all those questions and review them for those same 3 rules. So is it on topic? Is it constructive? And is it not about an individual? And as long as it passes those 3 rules, I will answer it. And we're going to start I'm going to start at the most upvoted comment that passes those 3 rules and work my way down until either 1, 30 minutes passes, or 2, we run out of questions. So the last thing I'll say just before we get started is I really like this format, and we've been using it at Kick for years because it's sort of my chance to be honest with the community. But what that does mean is because I'm not preparing ahead of time, because I'm not trying to position answers, sometimes I will say things the wrong way. I'll answer a question that gets interpreted one way, but I didn't mean it that one way. And in that case, we'll come back and we'll correct that. Sort of just the cost of doing things this way. And then second thing is I won't actually be able to answer every question. There are some questions that are confidential to specific people or to specific entity. So I will absolutely do my best to answer every question I can that meets these 3 rules. So with that, let's get started. So I got the Reddit page open here. Question period, the first Kin community question period. Okay. So let me refresh this. I'm going into the comments on the Reddit page. Okay. I see that Rod, who's our communications guy, has posted sort of 4 starter questions, and we just posted those to get things going in case, as questions start to come in. But River Gee, I won't say everybody's name before the question. I'm going to start there because, there's a question from the community, and we'll get started. So the question is, does Kin have a plan to be listed on any of the following exchanges? HitBTC, Bittrex, Poloniex, Binance. For a company that is supposed to have millions of dollars in backing, they should be able to fork up some money to get listed on these exchanges. So I think that's a super fair question. And maybe I'll just go back for a second and just give you a little context about how we got here. When we were doing our token distribution event, it was a pretty new idea. Here's an established company, billion-dollar valuation, launching its own cryptocurrency. And I think we were the first VC-backed company to do that. Certainly the first unicorn company to do that. And because of that, there's a lot of lawyers and accountants and investors involved of, okay, what is this new thing? How are we going to make it work? And we wanted to do things in sort of as a regulatory compliant way as possible. And so at the time, on the other side, we also looked at all these exchanges, and they were at the time just picking up these tokens, these new tokens on their own. There's a new token distribution event, right away the token gets picked up on all these major exchanges. And so we sort of sat there and we said, okay, we're not quite sure what the rules are going to be going forward. And so we want to be as sort of regulatory safe as possible. And at the same time, these exchanges are just picking up the tokens on their own. Like, let's just let the exchanges pick up the token. That way we can be safe and the token gets out there, because we do need the tokens to be on the exchanges for this ecosystem to work. Developers and consumers and everybody who's going to be part of Kin is going to need that liquidity. And so we thought we were pretty, clever about this. But then the world changed right as we did our token distribution event. New guidance came out from the regulators, putting more pressure on the exchanges to do a lot more due diligence on which tokens they would pick up. And that, I think, caught everybody a little off guard. And so right away, we had to change our approach to how we would work with exchanges, but also the exchanges had to change their own approach, how they would vet new tokens and get them onto the exchanges. And so that took some time. The world changed, how tokens get onto the exchanges changed, and how we had to operate within that new world changed as well. And so I can't talk about this too much because it's a confidential process, is what people have asked for at this point. But I will say that we are fully aware that for this ecosystem to work, for Kin to work, there needs to be liquidity for these tokens on major exchanges. Okay, I'll hit refresh here and we'll go to the next question. What are some of the really big milestones we can expect over the next 2 to 3 months? So I think a big thing, we do this token distribution event back in September, and then we're ramping up. We're getting to the point where, we're able to deliver this really clear roadmap to the community. And I think as, if I were sitting in the community, I would be like, what is taking so long? Like, just publish the roadmap. What is taking so long? And I think the thing that I underestimated, was just how long it would take to transition from a company that was trying to build one app, add advertising to it, and then scale that into an advertising business. That's what we were doing, 3 months ago even. That was the game plan. We had 160 people trying to build a traditional company with a traditional revenue model in a traditional way. And then all of a sudden, here we were, we had this sort of what people called a crazy idea when we first started talking about this back in 2011, of building, instead of building a traditional company with a traditional model in a traditional way, we're building a new type of company and a new type of model in a totally new type of way. We're building a new economy around a new currency. And so I think, as we got through that token distribution event, as we sort of realized that, oh my gosh, the world is behind us, we're going to be able to execute on this dream that we've always had, we underestimated how long that transition would take. We had to go back to becoming a startup. This was, for 9 years, we had sort of optimized and learned how to build a mobile app and execute in the mobile space in this sort of industry dominated by giants. And here we were going back to the early days of an industry. Crypto today sort of reminds me of mobile back in 2009 when we first started Kik. And So there's less data out there, there's less research, and you need to transition from, sort of very, cautiously, systematically, and back into, let's be scrappy, let's make bets, let's move quickly. And so that's the transition we've been making internally, the transition for how we operate, the transition for how we communicate, both internally but also externally, to default open. And that's taken time. But I now feel like we're coming out of that transition, and we're coming out of it with sort of a unique view into not just sort of the go-to-market and the strategy behind cryptocurrencies, but with also the brand and scale of an existing consumer app. And then also with sort of 9 years of very painful lessons learned. And so the next step on the roadmap is the number one priority for me right now is to get to a very simple drag and drop SDK. So that's the first thing. That's what we're working on now, is so that out of the box, any app out there, they could take this Kin SDK, drop it into their app, and within 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, they could boot up their app, and right away there's a balance for their users, there's ways to earn, and there's ways to spend. That's the number one thing we're working on right now. We hope to deliver that in Q1. The second thing we're working on is a much more scalable blockchain. We've been using Ethereum today, and to be honest, I call it the dial-up era of blockchains. It's like dial-up, like the picture is coming in like this, like click, 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 click. And as we've been using Ethereum and sort of trying to shoehorn it into Kik, it's been super complicated. We have to add all these fees automatically on the user's behalf, because they're not going to understand that they have Kin, but they also need Ether to pay the gas to get the transactions to run. The scale is very low. Even at 10,000 users, we're starting to push the limits of what the Ethereum blockchain can handle. And then even just reliability. Like the CryptoKitties craze takes off right as we're launching the next version of Kin on the Ethereum blockchain, and guess we got to wait for 3 days while this CryptoKitties craze passes through. And so the number two thing we're working on is moving to a new blockchain. The blockchain we're targeting right now to move Kin to in sort of the Q2 second quarter timeframe next year is Stellar. So Stellar was built by the guys that built Ripple. And the thing we really like Stellar is it's custom built for an application like Kin. It's not like Ethereum where it's trying to be everything to everybody, and that makes it sort of general purpose and slow. It's being very focused in what it's trying to solve for. Very fast, reliable, and inexpensive transactions for a lot of people. And so we're evaluating that now. Stellar makes great claims around their scalability. We will be load testing and confirming those over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And assuming that goes well and Stellar meets the claims that it says it does, we hope to move to Stellar in the second quarter next year. And then finally, the third thing I would say is we want to start showing the world what's possible with a cryptocurrency. I think cryptocurrencies are really misunderstood. A lot of people look at cryptocurrencies today like Bitcoin and say, hey, this is a great replacement for dollars or something like that. Let's use it to buy coffee and hamburgers. But that doesn't make sense to us. What we really think Kin, a cryptocurrency, Kin in this case, can be really good at is facilitating the exchange of value between people in the digital world. In the digital world today, we have billions of consumers participating in all these different services, providing value to each other, offering great advice, hosting great experiences, creating great content. There's only one problem with that today, and that's that none of those people get paid. People are offering so much value, but it's these big services that are taking that value, layering advertising on top, and keeping all that value for themselves. But when you look at traditional currency systems, they don't work for this digital world. This digital world requires sort of a financial system that can recognize and work for the use case where if some kid in Venezuela hosts a great group chat, for example, And in doing so, somebody on the other side of the world wants to join that group chat and is willing to pay one millionth of a dollar to do that. That's where the current financial system just doesn't work. The current financial system is built for the physical world. And that's really where we think there is a new opportunity to build a new system for the digital world, what I call the digital sharing economy. And it's like the sharing economy in Uber, Airbnb. I'll drive for you, you drive for me, I'll rent you my apartment, you rent me your apartment. But now it's in the digital world. I'll host a great group chat for you, you host a great group chat for me, I'll create a great sticker for you, you create a great sticker for me, I'll give you great advice on how to program your app, you give me great advice on how to program my app. And that's where we think a digital currency like Kin can really work. And so the third thing we're working on is showing the world, I think, what's possible. We've been working on this, thinking about this for a very long time. You know, we launched Kick Points back in 2014. And so the third thing we're going to do is inside of Kick, but also inside of other apps, is show the world what Kin plus X looks like. What does Kin plus messaging look like? What does Kin plus live streaming look like? What does Kin plus a game look like? What does Kin plus fashion advice look like? And building out all those experiences and open sourcing them all, giving them all away with the goal of inspiring developers around the world to take up those projects, have a great starting point on day one, have a user base on day one, and have the ability to monetize on day one through the Kin rewards engine. So that's the third thing we're going to do, is really build out the integration of Kin inside of Kick. But we're also going to launch a second app outside of Kick, open source that from day one, and show what Kin plus X can look like outside of messaging. Okay, I will refresh. So is token burning an option you guys considered? So I think our goal since the beginning was to set up something that could be fair to everybody. You know, we wanted to be fair to the consumers that would use Kin. We wanted to be fair to developers that would help us build out the ecosystem. We wanted to be fair to people who bought tokens in the token distribution event. And we also wanted to be fair to the investors and team that have been building and funding Kick over the last 9 years. And so during the token distribution event, we set a cap at 125 million. We ended up getting 100 million roughly. And so to be fair, we didn't keep the rest for ourselves, but we distributed the extra to all those people that bought tokens. And we felt that was fair. And then, so I think the next step for us is, building this ecosystem. I mean, this is the opportunity we've waited for since 2011, the ability to build something both open and amazing for society like internet or the email, but also to build something that's very valuable like Facebook or Google. And in crypto, for the first time, you can do both at the same time. And that's never been possible in history before. And so I think if we can get that going, if we can make that work, if we can all start working together on that, I think everybody, by working together, we'll also win together. We'll all get that upside together. And so that's our goal. Okay, 11:21 Eastern. Let me just see if any questions have jumped to the top here. Okay, where do you see Kin in 1 year? So I think the thing to know about me is that I am very optimistic. My mode of operation is trying to figure out how things might work against the odds, and to try to find that path of like, but if this happened, then that happened, then this might work, and that could have an amazing impact on the world. And so when you ask me, where do I see Kin in 1 year, I'm optimistic. And so what it means is I'm going to share my optimism with you, and In the short term, it will prove to be optimistic. But in the medium term, I think it will prove to be realistic. And by setting these sort of high ambitions and being optimistic, we push ourselves to achieve more than we might have been able to otherwise, even if ultimately we fall a little bit short in our optimism. So that's my disclaimer. I'm an optimistic guy. The goal for Kin this year is to get it to the point where there's an SDK that any developer can easily integrate and have an experience up and running within 5 minutes for their users. Two, that SDK runs on a very reliable, high-scale blockchain, a blockchain that just simply does not exist today. And then number three is to have more and more developers coming into that ecosystem and to get that flywheel going. Whereas more developers come in to help build the ecosystem, that brings in more consumers who are doing more transactions, who are creating more demand for the currency, who are creating a more valuable reward. So that's the real network effect that we're trying to get going is, that's the beautiful thing about a cryptocurrency is like the more we all contribute to it, the more valuable it gets, the more valuable it gets, the more we all want to contribute to it. And so I think that's the goal for this year is to really get that flywheel going. We have that SDK, it runs on that scalable blockchain, and we've inspired developers to take up that SDK and to get this digital sharing economy going across an increasing number of apps. And I think if we could do that next year in 2018, I think that'd be really exciting. All right. Are there any current talks with other companies about integrating Kin into their platform when it's up and running? Will Kin eventually be used as a payment system for other services like buying coffee or buying fast food? Okay, those are two different questions. So let me answer the first one. Yes, we're in talks with lots of other companies. It's early days. We don't have that really simple SDK for them yet. So we do talks, we're sort of, hey, this is what we're working on. What do you think? Let's sort of work on this together. And there's excitement around this. And I think that excitement comes from, we live in a world dominated by monopolies. And, even apps as big as Kik are struggling to compete and struggling to monetize. And that's true sort of across the 99% of other digital services and developers out there. And so if there's another way to compete and another way to monetize, another way to build value for the world, that gets people excited. On the second question, will Kin eventually be used as a payment system for other services like buying coffee or buying fast food? For us, the physical world, using cryptocurrency in the physical world makes no sense. And when we first started, getting really interested in Bitcoin, we actually went to a conference in January 2012. And it was just like a handful of people. I think there was, 12 people there plus me, so 13 people there. And, one was the lead developer on Bitcoin and like the who's who of cryptocurrency. And I was like, oh, I have to be there. I have to be there. I think Bitcoin is a phenomenal innovation. I think it's going to revolutionize the world, but I think it's fundamentally flawed. And here we are, and Bitcoin's passing $250 billion. I still believe Bitcoin is fundamentally flawed. We can talk about that maybe another time. But in terms of what Bitcoin to me was, if you wanted it to be a medium of exchange, if you wanted it to be something that people would actually use to facilitate the exchange of value between people, that Bitcoin would never achieve this. That was my view. That was my view back in 2012. That's my view today. Why? The reason why is because to me, not to me, the reality is that today the entire physical world runs on dollars. You're Starbucks. you sell coffee for dollars, and then you take that money and you buy your coffee beans in dollars, you pay your rent in dollars, and you pay your employees in dollars. And then your employees, they receive their dollars and they go out and they buy their groceries in dollars. They pay, for their taxis in dollars, and they pay their rent in dollars, and they buy their Starbucks in dollars. The whole world, the whole physical world runs on dollars. And that is as it should be. That's the reality. That's the way it should be. And so when you talk to me about like, oh, but what if we could buy our Starbucks in Bitcoin? It makes no sense to me. Like, so okay, let me get this straight. I'm an employee. I get paid in dollars. I'm going to convert that to Bitcoin. I'm going to go to Starbucks. I'm going to buy a coffee in Bitcoin. They're going to immediately convert it back to dollars to pay me as their employee. Like, why don't we just stay in dollars? And that is the way the world has played out. I think I read some stat that today there are less dollar-based transactions in Bitcoin today than there were three or 4 years ago. People are realizing Bitcoin's great as a store of value, but it is not a medium of exchange. And so this is what gets us excited about CAN, as we've been thinking over the last, 6 years now, is to facilitate the exchange of value in the digital world. In the world where all these consumers are coming to all these different services, providing value, but not getting compensated, that we could fix that. And then second, all these developers that are being beaten down by these monopolies, being copied and crushed at every turn, have no possible business model because they don't have the data and scale to effectively monetize through advertising. Going to them and saying, hey, help us create this new world for consumers. And the degree to which you help us, you will get rewarded in CAN. And by working together as consumers and developers, everybody working together, we could build this new world, this digital sharing economy. That could be amazing for humanity. And so that's where we think the real opportunity is, we think the physical world runs on dollars, and that makes sense, and that's the way it should be. But we think there's a real opportunity in the digital world. And with that, it's now 11:30 Eastern, and so just want to take this moment to say, thank you for tuning in, for answering these questions. This is going to be something we're going to try doing on a monthly basis for the next 3 months and just see how it goes. We're sort of learning on the fly here, adjusting to this we're not a private company that's trying to build one app. We're a crypto ecosystem, and we're trying to spark a movement. And for that to work, it's not just 160 people working here in an office. It's for it to work, it's going to require millions of people all around the world contributing and working together. And so because of that, it made sense to try doing question period in this sort of new and open way. So we hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.